Hi everybody, this is Brian Koo with another ROK video, and I want to talk about the issue of bots in Champions of Olympia. So I was playing COO over the weekend and noticed very early on in the match that one of my opponents was sending one march at a time towards the middle flag, and then I quickly noticed, oh, it's actually a bunch of enemies who are sending one march at a time. This is strange. Teams are usually not this easy to beat. And eventually, a few minutes into the match, we all realized that we were playing against a team of bots. And so we did what any normal human being would do. We camped their start zone and got as many kills as we possibly could. Now, bots have been around in Champions of Olympia for quite some time. I do think they are popping up quite a bit lately, just based on the very small data set of me encountering them in an unranked match over the weekend. And I was also watching another YouTuber, Black Panther, who was playing in a pretty high-ranked, team-ranked match, and he also played against a team of bots that were doing the exact same things that these bots were doing. They were just spawning and immediately sending their marches to the middle. It looks, and actually they had this, I think, something very similar to this bot team that we're playing, where one of the bots would go to the home flag, one of the bots would go to the flag on the right, and then 2 to 3 of the bots would all just send middle. And I think this is not a huge deal in Champions of Olympia because, you know, I think most of us will appreciate an easy win in COO every once in a while. It's the kind of game mode that a lot of people play just to get the rewards and to maybe have a bit of fun, even though it can be frustrating as often as it is fun. And this does bring up the question of, are bots a problem in Rise of Kingdoms? The first thing I'll point out is that the reason you see a lot of bots in Champions of Olympia is because you get rewards even if you lose the match. And so even though these bot teams are very easy to beat, even though they inevitably never win a match unless they're paired up against another bot team, you can still get rewards on these accounts by playing this game mode over and over again. And I think that is really where the nexus of the bot problem in Rise of Kingdoms pivots between being an actual issue and being not a big deal. In the parts of Rise of Kingdoms that are very skill-based, where we can see how human intelligence and human movement rules the day, I don't think bots are an issue in those areas. And the main things we're talking about there is the open field and filling up garrisons and rallies. I think in the open field, when you look at what's happening in the game today, most people are very good at pulling their marches back to a safe position, pulling some enemy marches with them, and just never really getting caught out. In the big open field battles that last for hours, generally speaking, the players who are out there hour after hour are very, very good at controlling their marches. It is a constant dance back and forth where for a few seconds you go forward, for a few seconds you go back, and you keep doing this dance back and forth. Is it an interesting type of combat? It's kind of interesting. Is it skill-based? Yes, it is skill-based in the sense that every few seconds you do have to change directions. Every few seconds you have to make decisions about what you're going to do with your marches. Am I going to stay on the same target? Am I going to switch to a different target? Am I going to push forward? Am I going to pull back? It's not that this is a in-depth combat system, but it is a system that requires constant attention, and I do think that the challenge and the difficulty of ROK's open field combat system does deter bots. I don't think bots can really compete well in most open field fights in this game. Now, there might be some situations where the battle never moves, where you're standing at one fixed position, and it really just comes down to how many marches you bring to that fight. A fight on a bridge is one example of a bot-friendly battle because everyone is just focusing all their firepower on one specific spot, and it's really a brute force competition rather than a dance in terms of which side is going to win. But I think generally that open field fighting, as well as filling up rallies from the field or even filling up garrisons from the field, is not something that bots are prevalent in. You know, if you just think about garrisoning a flag that's where the enemy has it surrounded, you have to hop from one city to another in order to get close to that flag, and then you have to put your march in when there's actual space for it to fit. Now, yes, a bot could be programmed to hop from one city to another, but then what does that bot do when one of the cities they're hopping to is full of troops? Do you then program it to have the intelligence to go to a different city instead and be, you know, slightly further away from the flag before they join it? You're getting to levels of complexity that someone programming bots for video games might not actually have the skill or the time to code a bot to do those sorts of things. I think where we have a bot problem in ROK is in the non-competitive portions of the game. Olympia and losing every match is one example of that. Another example of that is in Gathering. It's pretty easy to create a bot to send marches out to Gathering tiles, and then, you know, 2-3 hours later, send your marches back, have the bot send your marches back out again. And, you know, in our current KVK, I'm going to have to click around a little bit to look at this, but in our current KVK, the person who is in first place in Gathering has a name that alludes to them being lazy, and yet they have 14 billion more resources gathered than the person in second place. The gap between second and sixth place is 4 billion resources gathered, but the person who is in first place literally has 15 billion more resources gathered than anyone else in this entire Lost Kingdom. Now, is there something fishy going on with this player gathering that many more resources than any other player? They're also, by the way, a big whale with a very good account. Look, I would be pretty shocked if there's not some sort of bot or some sort of macro gathering resources for this player. It just doesn't make any sort of human sense that a huge whale would be one of the greatest gatherers in the history of this game, where they're literally waking up in the middle of the night to send their gatherers out to get more resources, even though they're also spending a bunch of money on the game. So I think there are certainly bots out there gathering resources in various kingdoms. And I think when it's a big whale who has spent a lot of money on the game doing this, even though statistically it's kind of obvious that they're botting, I think the game developers look the other way because this person is spending money. Another place where bots are likely present and a problem is in killing barbarian forts. Killing barbarian forts is a very effective way to gain resources and speed ups, and also convert your active AP into AP bottles. And so, you know, killing barbarian forts is a key way that kingdoms grow their army. They use their AP to run forts, and then those forts make their army stronger in terms of speed ups and resources. Is it likely that there are a lot of bots who are doing barb forts in either the home kingdom or in Lost Kingdom? Yes, I think it is very likely there are a lot of bots doing that as well. And that is, you know, that is where the potential problem in the future lies, is that if you do not enforce anti-botting policies, if you do not punish players who are obviously botting, then what's going to happen is that the kingdoms that use a lot of bots to gather resources and that use a lot of bots to run barbarian forts, their armies are going to get stronger and stronger over time. It's not that they will be actively using bots during war, it's that they will be actively using bots to prepare for war. And I think ultimately we do not want this game to become one where what really matters is how big of an army you bring to war. We want war to be decided by the team that has better strategy and that executes better during the fighting. Let's make this a skill game, not a preparation-based game. And so, what can be done? Well, I think really what has to be done is that Lilith needs to enforce their policies better and punish people who are botting. Why are bots running rampant in Champions of Olympia? It has to be trivially easy to detect what accounts are bots in Champions of Olympia. Just look for the players that have lost 99% of their games. Look for the teams that lose 99% of their games by massive, massive margins. And then just ban those accounts. They have bot-based names. Their names are obviously bots. Once you look at the scoreboard, you can immediately see that they're bots because they all have these just like gibberish type names. So just ban all those accounts. I mean, really, these bots who play Champions of Olympia are essentially doing Lilith a favor by, drawing a big look at me sign over their own heads. So just go through Champions of Olympia, ban all the bots, ban all those accounts, and then also figure out ways to detect and punish bots that are doing gathering and that are doing barb forts. And if a whale is just obviously botting based on their statistics, then I don't know, like watch them for a couple weeks, collect the data, and then maybe enforce your policies and ban them. And then that will deter other people from doing the same thing. Because right now I think we just have an enforcement problem with the non-competitive, non-skill-based portions of the game where bots are quite prevalent. And at the same time, let's keep doing things that make this game more skill-based, that make the game more unpredictable, and where incomplete information is a bigger part of the equation. When you're at war, you don't know what your enemy is going to do. And that incomplete information is what makes human beings better at calculating the correct decision than a bot. In the new Ark of Osiris mode, where there's a permanent fog of war and you cannot see where your enemy is moving to, that is a feature change that is going to deter bots in Ark of Osiris. Because as a human being, when I can see some of what my enemy is doing, then I can use intuition to come up with the appropriate response for our army. Whereas an artificial intelligence needs data in order to calculate what the correct thing to do is. So I think we're looking at a moving target in Rise of Kingdoms and in gaming in general. Artificial intelligence will get stronger. People will become better at creating bots to play these games. But as far as where ROK is at now, I think we actually need to go back a step and really just focus on reducing the ability for bots to help kingdoms prepare for war. Reduce the number of bots gathering resources. Reduce the number of bots who are running barbarian forts. Because at this point in ROK, kingdoms are doing a lot of things to best prepare themselves for war. The number of resources a kingdom has is not calculated in matchmaking. The number of speed-ups a kingdom has is not calculated in matchmaking. The number of farms a kingdom has is not calculated in matchmaking. So these are the areas where kingdoms are currently finding an edge, and it is also the areas where kingdoms are pushing their players to develop their strength further. More farms, more resources gathered, more speed ups to bring into the next war. And, you know, this is just an issue with these types of war games. I have quit war games in the past. I used to play a game called Travian, and I quit because I spent 8 months painstakingly building my army, gathering resources, raiding other cities for resources in order to be ready for a war at the end of the server. And what I realized when this war occurred is that there were people who simply went on vacation and had a bot do all the things that I was doing by hand. And then when the war happened, they were just as prepared for it as I was. And this just made me feel like a sucker. It made me feel like a fool for putting in all this human effort when someone else was having a robot do it for them. And the place we don't want to get to in ROK is we don't want to get to a point where we go into a war and we lose to a team that has worse strategy, worse execution, and worse vibes than we have. But because their army is simply so much bigger, because they have unlimited resources, because they have lots of speed ups to heal and train new troops, because they have a lot of farms to fill up garrisons with, and maybe also because they have a bunch of human pilots controlling those accounts, they beat us anyway. They beat us simply because their army is bigger. Not because they play the game, not because they play the actual war better, but because they play that preparation phase, that army building phase better than us. And then we have this question, was it really them building the army, or was it an artificial intelligence building the army for them? We don't want to get to that point in Rise of Kingdoms, and so we do need to constantly combat bots. We cannot be casual about the fact that while bots may not be fighting for us, bots are building the army that human beings fight with. And, you know, I think it's acceptable right now. I don't feel like a sucker playing this game now, because at the end of the day, these open field fights do take skill. Keeping rallies filled does take skill. And keeping the vibes up in your alliance does take charm. So for now it's fine, but let's not let it get out of hand, and let's actually pick the low-hanging fruit of these obvious bots that really should be banned. So that's all for today's video. Please throw a like on the video if you've made it this far and are enjoying the content. That's a great way to support my channel. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.